left at the mercy of paedophiles because of failings by police and council bosses. That's the verdict of a damning report into the handling of identifies 96 men still deemed a potential risk to children. Tonight, I'll be joined in the studio by the father of one victim who waived her right to anonymity to try to help others in her position. Also coming up, we'll bring you a cold case murder sentencing from Scotland as two men who killed a schoolgirl as teenagers and then evaded justice for 27 years are jailed for life. Everton hit out at the Premier League's financial rules as the club is charged with another breach, along with Nottingham Forest. We'll find out what it means for both clubs. And a huge area of the UK is bracing for ice and snow with an Arctic blast, seeing temperatures plummet this evening. All that to come and much more on the UK Tonight. We start tonight with a damning report into authorities in the northwest of England that failed children and left them in the clutches of paedophiles. The review into grooming gangs in Rochdale found failings by senior police and indifference from council bosses. Shockingly, the report found that many of the abusers are yet to be apprehended, with 96 men identified as a potential risk to children today. In a moment, I'm going to be joined here in the studio by the father of a victim who waived her right to anonymity to try to help other victims. But first, our home editor, Jason Farrell, has this report.
The women who blew the whistle on police failures to investigate a grooming gang. Today, vindicated. Former sexual health worker Sarah Rowbotham, visibly emotional, angry that she'd not been believed.
I was described as being difficult to work with. Well, what did you expect? Children were being raped every day. The scale of abuse was known to protective services at the time, and they chose not to take appropriate action. Someone needs to explain why.
Operation Span was deemed a success when it led to the prosecution of 9 men in 2012. But report authors today said they identified 96 individuals in the town of Rochdale who potentially pose a risk to children, many still walking the streets. So today came this apology to the victims.
One of the primary responsibilities of the police is to protect the vulnerable from the cruel and the predatory. And in this regard, we failed you. The lessons from our past have been well and truly learned.
But Maggie Oliver, a detective from Operation Span who resigned in disgust at police failings over a decade ago, refuted that claim, telling the chief constable directly that victims were still being failed.
I have current information about what is going on today. And I would say categorically, and I am sorry, Mr. Watson, but the failures that happened then are still happening now.
Andrea, not her real name, was a victim of sexual grooming in Greater Manchester 20 years ago. Abused from the age of 11, she said authorities blamed her.
As I got older, I realised what they were doing. Because I was being groomed, they called me a prostitute.
They were actually using that word?
Yes, they all labelled me a prostitute.
She says a young relative is being sexually exploited now, and history is repeating itself.
Greater Manchester Police are silencing everyone. They still don't want to hear what's going on. You have to beg and beg and beg for them to help. They'll find any excuse. Show me one thing they're doing differently from when I was a child.
But the chief constable insists much has changed.
But what is absolutely clear is that the mistakes, the systemic failures to protect children of 10 and 20 years ago in Rochdale, as night follows day, could not be repeated in Manchester today. Of that I am confident.
The report also condemned some police officers who failed to engage with the inquiry.
I also want to say shame on every individual who was asked to give evidence to this inquiry but refused to do so. When you failed to take appropriate action to protect children, or you failed to investigate crimes, shame on you.
Manchester's mayor is calling for people to be compelled to give evidence in the next investigation, which will examine how victims are being treated now. Jason Farrell, Sky News.
Well, my guest tonight with me in the studio is Marlon West. Now, for 3 years, Marlon would spend his nights driving around Greater Manchester looking for his teenage daughter. He was convinced she was being sexually exploited, but he says no one would listen. His daughter Scarlett waived her right to anonymity to try to help others in the same position. Marlon, thank you so much for coming in to see us at the UK Tonight. Big day this, been a long time coming, this report. What did you make of what was said today?
I think it was appalling. I disagree with the review. I don't think anything's changed. I agree with Maggie Oliver. In my experience, nothing has changed, and there's still cultural attitudes towards these girls who are being groomed.
Well, you wouldn't think that, hearing from the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police, Steve Watson, today. He said it's shocking, stark and shameful. We could all agree on that. But he said lessons from our past have been well and truly learned and solidly baked into systems used by police and partner agencies today. Frontline officers are better trained in child safeguarding. Now, because of what you and Scarlett have been through, you speak to other parents.
I speak to a lot of parents.
Whose children have been through this, are going through this. And Scarlett, still not out of this today. She was 14 then, she's now 19. What's the experience you've got at the moment about the way things are today?
So this has left Scarlett traumatised. It's gone from one extreme of going missing all the time, not knowing where she is, with now isolating herself in the bedroom. And mental health clearly needs some work. She hasn't been offered any support. She was under CAMHS, but because she's 19 now, it goes over to adult mental health services. She has not been offered any therapy for complex trauma.
Marlon, you've been living this for the last 4-5 years. Talk to me about what happened to Scarlett, because, you know, as part of this report, they were looking into the victims of these grooming gangs. And the preconceived idea is that these were young white girls from impoverished background, from different disadvantaged backgrounds. Scarlett was not. No. And your message is, look, you know, don't disregard this as a news item you see and think it could never happen to our family. It can. Talk to me about what happened to Scarlett.
So, pre the grooming, she went to quite a prestige school. She had her own horse. She would go to her horse every night after school. At weekends, she would go riding. And then the grooming started. I guess initially, I just thought it was her age. Then as she started going missing, and that increased and increased, which was really out of character, then alarm bells were shouting out at me. I try and get support from local authority, from the police. That never happened. To the point that, yes, I was driving around till 4 a.m. in the morning, looking for her, ringing the police. The police were saying, yeah, we'll find her with you. I'd find her at a property, and the police wouldn't even turn up. You would call them and say, I know where my 14-year-old daughter is? I'd be outside the property. And they wouldn't turn up? They didn't even turn up. Marlon, you felt that you were then seen as a nuisance by the police because this happened more and more frequently. I mean, let's remember, Scarlett is 14 years old. If a 14-year-old girl goes missing, this should be treated as a matter of priority by whatever authority you call. But because of the frequency with which this was happening, because she was caught up in grooming with gangs of men, you felt that the more it happened, the less seriously you were being taken. What was it like dealing with the police and the local authorities? How were you and your family treated? Appallingly. The stress that I put myself and the extended family, it caused a lot of frictions. So it's not just about the impact, obviously, it's having on Scarlett, but the wider picture. Of course. It was so frustrating. I would go to strap meetings and the police would clearly tell me to stop reporting her missing. When she was 14 years old, I reported her missing in that year 58 times. And when she went missing, yeah, sometimes it'd be for a night or two, but sometimes it would be for a fortnight. She's 14 years old.
People watching tonight will often watch a report like the one from Jason just now about this and go, where are the parents in this? Where are the parents in this? The parents are right in it.
Yeah.
You're just not getting the support. The scale of this problem is now known. The report has highlighted that. Do you think it's prioritised now? Because that's what GMP is saying.
No.
They're admitting failings and they're admitting indifference amongst local authorities. But they're saying, you know, children are now being prioritised. This is front and centre.
Absolutely not. Not in my experience. I was seen at some points as a bad parent because I couldn't keep my daughter indoors. Up until 12 months ago, she was still being groomed, which is quite recent. And again, in my experience, the police were not supportive and neither were local authority. One of the frustrating things that I found with the police and local authority is they don't communicate. There's no communication, there's no joined up thinking between the two services.
You have asked the police for information about how they dealt with your calls, your complaints, your requests for help. Because, yes, this report has come out and there have been convictions, 9, but this report says, you know, there are 96 men identified in this report as being arrested children today. You know, it seems like this report has only just scratched the surface. What do you want to happen to those who failed you and, more importantly, failed Scarlett?
I want a full investigation, which is what I've been asking for.
So like a full public inquiry, because we're focusing on Rochdale and the North West, but this will be happening in other parts of the country.
This is national. I speak to people all over the country, from Northern Ireland to London. This is happening all over the country, and possibly not the great word to use, but it's kind of a trend that these young girls and lads are being groomed. Not just sexually, there's criminal elements to it. And I do believe that they both come together. I would welcome a national public inquiry because where's it going to end?
And how was Scarlett treated in all of this? I mean, we've spoken about how you were treated by the police, but what about Scarlett in her dealings with them? Because, of course, you know, child safeguarding is paramount in good policing in this instance.
So one example is there was a period where she was missing for 2 weeks and the police did track her down, only because I told them where she was. They went into the property with the groomers and texted me and said, your daughter is safe, and left her there at 14-year-old. Again, the impact it had on her. Then as time went on, you know, she was strip searched.
At 14?
A 14-year-old. And again, Scarlett recognised that as a punishment because she was causing them a problem. The way they spoke to her, there's lots of occasions when they've turned up at my property and they're shouting at her for going missing. I don't think that's a positive intervention. When the chief constables tell me that they've all had specialist training.
Marlon, we know Scarlett is still dealing with this now at 19. This began when she was 14. She's still very much going through it now. And I think that's an important point to make in terms of when children are finally taken away from these situations, it doesn't end for them or families there, does it?
No, not at all. There needs to be more interventions with parents and supporting parents. For example, I would give the police intelligence and then they would say we're not allowed to take intelligence off the police. Now, when I'm saying intelligence, I'm talking car reg numbers, what I've got off my CCTV. So I was offering hard evidence and then refused to take that from me.
Marlon, you and Scarlett really have been through it and we really appreciate you being so brave to speak to us. Scarlett has spoken to us, and our home editor, Jason Farrell. She bravely waived her right to anonymity, and I'm so sorry that she is still struggling today, but as we spoke before we came on air, the chink of light in this is that she is still so young, and there's time for her to process this and hopefully go on to a better and brighter future. So we wish the best for Scarlett and for you, Marlon. Thank you. We will keep in touch because the story is by no means done yet, as we've just discussed.
One of the things I would like to say, as far as Rochdale, I'm involved in PACE charity, Parents Against Sexual Exploitation. In 2021, PACE had liaison officers, what was supporting families in Rochdale, and the local authority pulled the money. I'm on the understanding that local authority really tried to keep that post, but because of government cutbacks, they just couldn't afford it. And this is one of the prevalent areas in the country.
How can you prioritise it if you're not funding and staffing it properly? Marlon, that's a really important note to end on, and we will look into that. Thank you, Marlon. And as I said, we wish Scarlett well as well. Please give her our best. I do just have to reflect a statement from Greater Manchester Police's head of public protection, who said that safeguarding vulnerable young people is of the highest importance to the force in recent years, and in recognition of previous failures, the force has worked hard to ensure the consistent delivery of outstanding service which fights crime, keeps people safe and cares for victims. This work is ongoing. Well, let's bring in our home editor, Jason Farrell, who joins me now from Manchester. Jason, of course, Marlon and Scarlett, you know well. But just looking into this report today, you know, even the report admits this is only just scratching the surface.
Yeah, I think that's why Marlon's and Scarlett's story is so important. It is gobsmacking, isn't it, just listening to that, and it resonates with all the things we've just heard in this report today about people not being listened to, the victims being criminalised, and the perpetrators continuing with their abuse. And I think that is the most shocking revelation in the report today, looking back at Operation Span, is that so many perpetrators, it says, were able to continue their abuse. And people have described it as shocking, disgusting, a really hard read, this report. But there is also criticism of current activities. I'll give you an example. They talk about actually the length of time it took to get the report together, because they were getting pushback from the council and the police about getting hold of information from social services. So the authorities weren't forthcoming with information. I think another big criticism is that certain police officers who were asked to participate have declined to participate in this, and that was shame on you, said one of the whistleblowers in the press conference today about that. And then you hear these stories from Marlon, and there was the woman who spoke to us today in my report earlier, and of course from Maggie Oliver, saying that this is ongoing, this is still a problem. Now the police say that is not the case. They have made improvements, they've employed many more officers, specialists in this area. But I think the difficulty is that one of the things about this report, and it was said time and again in the press conference today, is that people like Maggie Oliver weren't listened to. They were ignored. And everybody today has said they should have listened to Maggie Oliver. But at the same time, they're also saying, well, what she's saying now, that's not quite true. So down the line, was she right again? And I think the perhaps most significant report is still to come, the fourth report, because we've had 3 so far. The fourth report will look at the current treatment of victims. And then we might get to the bottom of the kind of things that Maggie Oliver is saying about what's going on now. But of course, the difficulty is that as they have had pushback in the past, now these are current investigations they're going to be looking at. So the police might have even more reason to say we don't want to share that information. So although they say they're going to report, they hope in the summer, I think it will be quite difficult for them to collate all the information they need to get that report together quickly.
Jason, thank you. Our home editor there, Jason Farrell. Now, Rishi Sunak said today that the government is prepared to back its words with actions on missile attacks on shipping in the Red Sea continued, despite last week's airstrikes on Houthi targets in Yemen. Well, a US-owned ship was struck by a missile off the coast of Yemen this afternoon, with Houthis vowing to keep up the attacks. Well, the strike caused a fire on board the vessel, the Gibraltar Eagle, which was carrying steel, but there were no injuries on board. Briefing MPs today, the Prime Minister called Thursday's strikes self-defence and said the threat to shipping must end.
They fired on our ships and our sailors. It was the biggest attack on the Royal Navy for decades. And so we acted. I do not take decisions on the use of force lightly. That's why I stress that this action was taken in self-defence. It was limited, not escalatory. It was a necessary and proportionate response to a direct threat to UK vessels and therefore to the UK itself.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister is facing embarrassment in the Commons tomorrow, with two deputy chairmen of the Tory party saying tonight that they'll vote for rebel amendments to the Rwanda bill. Our chief political correspondent, John Craig, is following this for us in Westminster. So, John, what are you hearing?
Well, for lovers of political soap opera, tonight's been vintage, better than EastEnders or Corrie, because on the eve of the dramatic showdown in the Commons on the Rwanda bill, we have indeed had two Conservative deputy chairmen playing pantomime villain, if you like, threatening to join the rebels and try and defy Rishi Sunak. The rebels want to toughen up the bill, make the government ignore all sorts of European legal conventions, Human Rights Act, all that sort of thing. And what happened this evening was that, first of all, Lee Anderson, who is one of the deputy chairmen, I spotted him. I was broadcasting to Sky News from the central lobby. He was actually behind me talking to the chief whip, Simon Hart. All the time, of course, there's been speculation all day about whether Mr. Anderson would join the rebels. I shouted to him, "Are you going to resign, Lee?" He laughed and didn't answer. But a minute or so later, he tweeted saying he was going to not only put his name to the amendments tabled by Sybil Cash and the former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick, but vote for them as well. And then the Brendan Clark-Smith, another Tory deputy chairman, said he was going to join the rebellion as well. Now, all this came on an evening when the Tories' election guru, Isaac Levido, was addressing Tory MPs at the 1922 committee and issuing this warning: people don't vote for divided parties. Divided parties fail. Well, the Tory party couldn't be more divided at the moment. There have been meetings all round the Palace of Westminster, various factions, including drinks with the Prime Minister in his room and so on. And then we had a Tory MP, Andrea Jenkins, calling for more Tory MPs to put in letters of no confidence in Mr. Sunak so we can get a new and true Conservative leader, she said. I told you, vintage soap opera.
OK, John, I won't alert people to what soap opera's on another channel, but stick with us, plenty more drama to come. John, thank you. Coming up on the UK tonight, we'll tell you about an alleged plot to disrupt the London Stock Exchange, as one man is charged. Also coming up, an incredible near miss for this police car, with a car driving on the wrong side of a dual carriageway. And a river in South Wales turns orange. We'll tell you why after the break. How's that for drama?
They've pushed the protesters further back here. There's around 200 or 300 still remaining.
I'm Dan Whitehead and I'm Sky News' West of England correspondent.
This van goes onto the streets of Plymouth 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
These facilities at the moment are a lifesaver. It's all we've got.
From fishing communities to bustling cities, we spend every day reporting from across the region, hearing from people who have real stories.
I'll have nowhere to live for about 3 or 4 months.
There are still people inside the properties here.
They're coming from the epicentre of what is now a global health pandemic. We were seeing and speaking to young women who were selling themselves right on the high street. It was desperately sad, and the fact it was happening right in the heart of this community. Before Brexit, these oysters were being exported to the EU, but the trade stopped overnight.
What's your feeling about the future then?
Bleak. Might all be finished, I don't know.
Welcome back to the UK Tonight. Here's what's on the way. I'm going to speak to the heroic railway worker who has been given an MBE after saving 29 people from taking their lives. And warnings for snow and ice are extended as an Arctic freeze blasts the UK. Right, let's take a look at some of the other stories making news in the UK tonight. And the families of 3 men killed in the Reading terror attack have paid tribute to them as the inquests into their deaths began today. David Wales, Joseph Richie Bennett and James Furlong were killed in June 2020 when Libyan refugee Khairi Sadala attacked a group of people with a knife. He was given a whole life term in 2021. Addressing the inquest today, Mr. Richie Bennett's brother said there is a hole in his family's hearts and a void that will never be filled. A man has been charged in relation to plans to disrupt the London Stock Exchange. 31-year-old Sean Middleborough appeared in court today, charged with conspiracy to cause a public nuisance. 5 others were arrested in London, Liverpool and Brighton on Sunday. The Metropolitan Police said that activists from the group Palestine Action were allegedly plotting to target the stock exchange this morning. Hampshire Police have released dashcam footage of an incredible near-miss for one of its officers. This police car was travelling at more than 100 miles an hour when it had to swerve to avoid a car that was driving the wrong way down a dual carriageway. Officers are now appealing for help to trace the driver of that car, which was travelling westbound on the A303 on Friday evening. Residents in Pontypool in South Wales have been left shocked after a large stretch of river in the town turned orange. The river became a rust colour as it flowed through Charlesville, an area of Pontypool, on Friday. Natural Resources Wales says the water pollution came from a nearby former irons work and is apparently now subsiding. From orange to yellow, that yellow warning for snow and ice in place for a huge area of the UK tonight. It's all because of an Arctic blast hitting the country this week. Temperatures around 5 to 6 degrees Celsius lower than usual for this time of year. And the Met Office says it will be well below freezing overnight. The UK Health Security Agency has a cold health alert in force. Well, yellow weather alerts for snow and ice are in place tonight for Northern Ireland, Northern Scotland and parts of East Anglia. By midnight, those areas are set to expand to include all of Scotland and most of northwest England. Our Chief North of England correspondent Greg Milam has this report.
The conditions that confronted this Network Rail crew in Scotland are now heading south. Warnings across the northwest of England of potential for ice and snow to bring disruption. And at the National Highways Control Room, the advice for drivers is to prepare.
We just basically ask people to plan for the journey and to help us, because we will be giving as much. We will have patrols on the network. We will be maintaining that the network is operational, but we will at times come across incidents that people breaking down, people stuck in live lane that we have to deal with because of the weather.
As we talked, the gritters headed out for what they say will be the coldest night yet this winter. An amber alert for the impact of that on people's health now covers the whole country and will last until Friday.
As we get frost and ice, we see people having fractures and falls. We know that the deaths go up. This year we are seeing people who are struggling to keep warm because of fuel poverty and food poverty as well. So that's starting to have more of an impact.
It's not only humans. At this farm in North Yorkshire, they're preparing to get their livestock through the wintry blast.
We've got to make sure that everything's sealed up at night when we've finished. We've also got to make sure that the cows have plenty of water, and all the young stock are on a lot of them are on water troughs, so we've got to make sure that those water troughs are able to run.
The north is used to cold winters, of course, but the warnings are clear. This is likely to be the worst so far for many this year. Greg Milam, Sky News.
So to come here on the UK Tonight, 2 men jailed for life over the murder of a schoolgirl in Scotland more than 25 years ago. And Everton and Nottingham Forest both facing points deductions for breaching Premier League financial rules. We'll have all the details for you. welcome back to the UK Tonight. Now, 2 men have been jailed for life over the murder of a teenager in Scotland more than a quarter of a century ago. Caroline Glachan was found dead in the River Leven in West Dunbartonshire in August 1996. Her mother, who has waited 27 years for justice, said today that she is over the moon. Matthew Thompson has this report.
For 27 years, Caroline Glachan's killers escaped justice. For 27 years, her family waited for answers. Now, at last, they have both answers and justice, as 2 men were sentenced to life in prison for her murder.
It is hard to find words to describe the evil nature of your crime, but 3 which come to mind are brutal, depraved, and above all, wicked.
14-year-old Caroline's broken body was found here in the River Leven in Dunbartonshire in 1996.
Hello. Hello? Yes. I just found a body there. It's in the water.
In spite of a major police investigation and heartbreaking appeals from her mother Margaret, no one was ever charged.
I'm really just here to ask anybody that saw anything, heard anything. She was my only way. Somebody must know something.
Then, in 2019, the case was reopened and crucial witness testimony emerged. The alibis of Robert O'Brien, Andrew Kelly and Donna Marie Brand, namely that they'd spent the whole night inside babysitting a 4-year-old boy, collapsed. In particular, police were able to corroborate the account of that very 4-year-old boy, who claimed at the time to have witnessed the murder. The gang had lured Caroline to this secluded spot on the river and brutally beaten her, leaving her for dead. Outside court today, Caroline's mother Margaret said she couldn't have wished for better.
I am over the moon. I just couldn't have asked for anything better. It's not going to bring Caroline back, but it's justice for her. She might be able to rest in peace now.
For nearly 30 years, Margaret never gave up the fight. And with just one of her daughter's killers still to be sentenced, justice for Caroline is, at long last, close to being done. Matthew Thompson, Sky News.
Everton and Nottingham Forest are both facing the threat of points deductions. This is after they were charged with breaching the Premier League's financial fair play rules. They're accused of sustaining heavier financial losses than is permitted. Well, Everton have already had a 10-point deduction this season, which they are in the process of appealing. They say that this charge, which covers the period for which they've already been punished, shows that there is a clear deficiency in the Premier League's rules. Well, let's bring in sports finance expert Dr. Christina Philippou, who joins us on the UK Tonight. Dr. Philippou, good to see you tonight. And let's first pick up by Everton's claim tonight that, you know, these fair play rules that they're said to have breached aren't playing fair, essentially. They're being punished twice. Have they got a good case here?
Well, the problem is that the rules are over a 3-year period, and because of COVID, that's actually been extended. So, yes, the previous was in for the 21-22 season, covered 4 years previously, and then we've got 22-23, which is what they've been charged for now, which covers some of the same period. So some of the issues are going to be exactly the same as they were before, and yes, therefore, some of the losses that have been sustained in a period already covered. But the rules are on an annual basis, looking back on a 3-year period, and the rules have been there for quite a while. So in that sense, they knew that the rules were in place before it came to the issues that have arisen today.
It's probably worth reminding people what these rules are there to do. They're financial fair play rules. When they were introduced, what were they designed to do for football?
So the idea behind financial regulation is to effectively stop clubs from going under, because we used to see a lot of administrations and issues, and obviously nobody wants that. So financial regulations were put in place to ensure that the losses were limited. The Premier League has their own regulations. UEFA have their own regulations for any clubs that play in European competitions, and most leagues have their own regulations, and they are there to stop clubs from going under. And in that sense, you know, they have worked. Regulations have worked. We are seeing fewer clubs go into administration since rules kind of came in place at UEFA level. What we are seeing now is the Premier League are also starting to sanction clubs. We saw that with Manchester City. We've seen that with Everton already, and now they're charging Everton and Nottingham Forest for this year. Well, last season.
Are these rules fit for purpose? Because, as you quite rightly said, they're designed to safeguard clubs, really, to stop them from, you know, spending too much, losing too much money. We've seen lots of football clubs go under. Many are close to, really. You know, there's so much. There's so many financial problems surrounding so many clubs. But the question today is, you know, are they fit for purpose? Because it feels like clubs who are keeping their heads above water, who aren't going under, are being punished, and particularly clubs at the lower end of the league. If you look at, you know, Nottingham Forest, a lot of fans today have said, hang on a second, Manchester City are being investigated and that result isn't going to come before the end of the season. They're not having point deductions. Chelsea are in the spotlight as well. So many fans are going, actually, are these regulations fit for purpose?
So because there have been issues in the past, and you know, the Everton case for last year is kind of demonstrating how having points deductions after the issue has come about, what they've done is they've almost expedited the regulations for this year, so that clubs have to report to the Premier League before their actual accounts are released for the public. They are, and the whole idea is to check to make sure that the regulations aren't breached, or whether regulations are breached, that things are sorted in that season, and then it doesn't kind of drag on like we are seeing, you know, with other cases. And so that change in the regulations is basically what's happening here with Nottingham Forest and Everton. Is we're trying to see that the Premier League are trying to make sure that any breaches of regulations are caught early, and therefore any sanctions are imposed in that season, that, you know, the season after it happened, as opposed to 2, 5, 10 seasons down the line.
Yeah, of course, Manchester City, 115 charges across 9 seasons. It's a very broad and complex investigation into City, all, of course, denied by City. They've not even had a hearing yet. Dr. Christina Philippou, really good to talk to you on the UK Tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, tomorrow is going to be another big day in the fight for justice for more than 700 former sub-postmasters wrongly convicted of theft due to a faulty Horizon IT system. It is, of course, the post office scandal. Well, MPs on the Business Select Committee will be hearing their stories tomorrow. They are represented by Alan Bates, the man whose story was dramatised by ITV to give a fresh push to their campaign for justice. Before then, some other victims of the scandal have sat down with Sky News to reveal the impact on their lives. Dan Whitehead has the story.
To still have that post office logo up there when they've been proved to be completely dishonest, I don't think they should be allowed to go on like that.
Within 2 weeks, it was all in the local newspapers that I'd stolen off of pensioners. Then I got spat at in the supermarket and things.
Biggest thing post office has done is broken the trust of the people who serve them, and they have stabbed us postmasters in the back.
They lost their savings, homes and health. Between them, Vipin Patel, Nikki Arch and Sarah Osolinsky were wrongly accused of stealing more than £100,000 from the post office. Their fight for justice is continuing.
I had to borrow some money of my sister, about £10,000. I had to cash in my Royal Mail pension, and then we had to sell my wife's gold to balance the books. I went upstairs and said, God, I want to die. I don't want to live anymore, because I knew the repercussions of this is going to be catastrophic and disastrous.
They have no business keeping Vipin's money, keeping what we've paid back to them. That is ill-gained finances that they have got and declared as profit, and they've got no right to keep that.
Decades on, these 3 former sub-postmasters are among thousands still fighting for full compensation, and for those responsible for this scandal to finally be held to account.
Do you want to see, after the inquiry's finished,
prosecutions?
Yes, I do. Because there are people with questions to answer, people that lied to the High Court, people that lied to the government. And that's got to be a crime.
All those that have broke the law must see British law. They must be prosecuted, because that's what we do in this country.
Whether prosecutions eventually come or not, for those impacted, there is no way to compensate for so many years lost.
It changes you forever, and there is no going back. You just learn to live. Every morning I wake up and think, great, new day. Oh God, post office. There's never a day in 23 years have I ever woke up and not thought post office. Every single day of my life, post office is right up there in the forefront.
Yeah.
And it'll never go away.
Dan Whitehead, Sky News.
Well, in response to our reporting on the Horizon IT scandal, the Post Office have issued this statement. It's come via a spokesperson. It says, "We are acutely aware of the human cost of the scandal. We're doing all we can to provide redress, both in respect of paying compensation and assisting the Horizon IT inquiry." The inquiry was set up to establish independently what went wrong in the past and accountability. Coming up on the UK Tonight, I'm going to be joined in the studio by a rail worker who has been given an MBE in the New Year's honours for his work in suicide prevention. And coming up in sport, after a disappointing first round exit, as Andy Murray played his final match at the Australian Open.
I'm Martin Brunt, and I'm Sky's crime correspondent. My most memorable story was, and still is, the disappearance of Madeleine McCann.
Please, please do not hurt her. Please give our little girl back.
We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news.
For detectives, the first 48 hours after a murder are crucial in the search for clues. The public expects them to find Jill Dando's killer soon. The British detectives are planning to meet forensic experts, academics, and even witch doctors.
I remember the grimmest case, the Soham murders of schoolgirls Holly and Jessica. I felt I can't undo what's happened, but I can help explain it.
Ian Huntley was arrested and charged within a fortnight of the murders.
I've never murdered anyone, I've never raped anyone. What am I in jail for?
The parole board has to decide if Bronson needs to be kept locked up for the safety of the public. My biggest challenge was to persuade a jailed diamond thief to answer my letters. Martin Brunt, Sky News at the Old Bailey.
Coming up, I'm going to speak to a railway worker. I'll say it properly when he's here, I promise. He's been given an MBE for his work in preventing suicides. He's a really impressive character. I'm looking forward to our chat. But first, I'm going to chat to Nick. He's here with the day's sports news. And Andy Murray at the Australian Open coming out with a statement that hints at retirement. So everybody's getting very excited about this.
Yeah, I mean, he was flat and limp today in a very un-Andy Murray way.
Yeah.
And a stark contrast to last year when he had two 5-set wins at the age then of 35 at the Australian Open, and people said, well, this man's indestructible, he goes on and on and on. Well, no one goes on and on forever. He says he's got a date in mind for a time, and as you say, after that defeat against Thomas Martin Echeverry, which was in 3 straight sets, 6-4, 6-2, 6-2, he was sounding the way he played downbeat.
It's a definite possibility that would be the last time I play here. And yeah, I think, just probably because of how the match went and everything, like disappointed with the way that I played and all of that stuff. So yeah, tough way to finish.
Yeah, he said it's a definite possibility that will be the last time I play here. I mean, Andy Murray will have known the impact those words would have had, so it's clearly on his mind. What's next for him between now and a potential stepping back?
Well, he carries on for now, as far as we know. I don't think he's going to suddenly say next week that was it. I think he'd like to go... Ideally, I think he'd like to go out in some kind of blaze of at least relative glory. I don't think he'd ever ruled out in his mind, probably still hasn't, that he might yet come back and win Wimbledon. Well, I don't think it's going to happen. And I think having seen the way he played there, I don't think he thinks it's going to happen anymore. Wimbledon, where he won twice, would be obviously a possible place to go. So would the US Open, which was the scene of his first Grand Slam triumph. He loves New York, loves the US Open, and that would complete 4 Grand Slams for the year if he plays all 4. But it feels like, as he was hinting, that was probably his last Australian Open. I've got some more tennis action for you from Melbourne.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
2024 will mark the return of the Olympic Games to Europe for the first time since London 2012.
Team GB sprinters have an enviable strength in depth, but only 3 male and 3 female sprinters can compete in the individual events.
Eugene Amodadze is one of a number of British sub-10 second 100-metre male sprinters. He's a little bit different though.
Yeah, a late starter, very late in fact. He began just 5 years ago, narrowly missing out on the World Championship 100-metre final last summer at the age of 31.
He's getting faster though, and that's all the more incredible as before he began sprinting, he'd forged himself a career. Meet the world's fastest accountant.
Right now, I still don't refer to myself as a sprinter. I'm just a chartered accountant. World's fastest accountant, that's what I like to call myself.
Run as fast as you can. I come to the hardest part.
Right, every penny, every little helps, right? That's what people think accountants are. I'm unbelievably proud of my accountant qualification. You know, my parents pushed me to, go to school, do well, get good grades, and qualify, as something. Being from a West African household, it was called like doctor, lawyer, engineer, accountant. So I guess I went down that route. So I'm incredibly proud of it, and I've had those aspirations of climbing the corporate ladder. Ooh, how far do you reckon it is from here to there? About 100 meters? I always used to sort of test myself.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Let's have a cold weather report, shall we?
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Oh, well, that Arctic flow is going to keep it really cold this week. Snow for some, a risk of ice as well. Inland areas mostly fine this evening, but there will be wintry showers near Windward Coast, bringing snow to northern and eastern parts in particular. Snow showers will continue over northern Scotland tonight, extending to northwestern parts as eastern England dries up. Donegal will see some more general rain later.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Now, a rail worker who has saved 29 people from taking their own lives has been made an MBE. Rizwan Javed works on the Elizabeth line in West London at Paddington. He says he's helped to save every life by being alert and approaching vulnerable individuals in difficult situations. He also runs Instagram and TikTok accounts to share his experiences aimed at inspiring others. And Riz joins me now. Riz, so good to meet you. Thank you. What a wonderful thing you've been able to do. at your job effectively, because your job is to work on the railways, and this is something that has come through that. Talk to me about how this first started.
I mean, I joined the railway approximately 9 years ago now, and a part of my railway induction was to attend the Samaritans training course due to a safeguarding issue along the line. So I attended the Samaritans training course, and only 2 days later, I was able to implement it in real life.
It's really interesting because you think of a first aider for physical health, but you can be a mental health first aider as well. And part of what you do is talking and observing to passengers. And in a world where everybody's on their platform, on their mobile phones, waiting for trains, you're alert and looking. What is it people should be looking out for?
I think the major signs are facial expression is probably the key one. Type of clothing people wear in line with the weather condition. If someone's isolating themselves in a specific area, missing constant trains. If you feel something's wrong, trust your instincts, and just build small talk. You know, you can anything random, nothing at that point you say is wrong. I tend to use the weather, a perfect example.
Just strike up a conversation.
Exactly, and this is about showing empathy. You know, doing it from the heart. Just be there for that vulnerable person.
Yeah, and Riz, as I said, you've saved 29 lives. Have you seen some of those people again? Because it is a moment in time and you're in the right place at the right time and knew instinctively what to do. Have you heard what's happened to them afterwards? Because you must always wonder.
I do. There was one person who returned back a few weeks after the intervention, and she just ran over and gave me a big hug and said, if it wasn't for you that night, I wouldn't be here. And that was the only person who really came back. But it was so heartfelt, I was so emotional. And honestly, from that day onwards, I've prayed for her to be living her best life and hope she is.
And Riz, since this MBE recognition, which is richly deserved, you know, we talk so much about the honours system, but this is a reminder of, you know, why people support it. You're about to start a podcast, you've got an organisation called Untangled, and just explain to us a bit about what you're trying to do with that.
So I want to create a safe platform where people could come and share their stories. I'll be sharing my story. I've got a few things in the pipeline in terms of launching a game. I'm not going to say too much about it. However, every participant in that game will be a winner. A few merchandise stuff. There's a lot of surprises to come.
It's about making mental health more accessible, and particularly being a mental health first aider, because, you know, anyone can help. I mean, a Samaritans training course kick-started you, but anyone can sort of approach someone to find out if they're okay.
And that's the message. I feel like we're all born with the skills. We just got to dig deep and establish them skills and have the confidence to have that conversation. You could come across a total stranger, and that's someone's family member, and your actions can make a massive impact in their life.
A small gesture makes a massive impact. And you mentioned talking about the weather, such a British thing to do. That should come naturally to all of us. Riz, it was really good to meet you. Congratulations on your MBE, and we look forward to seeing the pictures when you head to receive it. Really good to meet you, Riz. Thank you so much. Good luck with the future. Well, if you know anyone who's been affected by anything that Riz and I have just discussed, the Samaritans is on hand, 116 123. Or you can email joe@samaritans.org. We'll see you tomorrow at 8.